Cool, I think sound's working. Okay, my name is Multiplier, and I'm going to be doing a quick, well not a quick, I don't know how long it'll take, YouTube tutorial on how I did my diminishing returns Moombahcore edit. And it's kind of, it's only an edit, it's not really a remix because I didn't do an awful lot to it, but even though edits are kind of 2011, people are still doing them, and it's a nice way to get into the whole producing thing. So I'm gonna tell you how I did it, and maybe you pick up a few things, maybe you don't, but if you wondered how I did it or how the process of doing an edit works, yeah, check this out. Anyway, if you haven't heard the track, it sounds a little bit like this. This is like the hook, the main bit. And then it gets kind of all dubsteppy around here. Yeah, pretty cool. Anyway, if you don't know much about Moombahton or Moombahcore, just Google it, but there isn't actually too much to it. It's kind of one of these weird internet genres that isn't well defined, and Moombahcore especially hasn't actually got that many characteristics other than the fact it's at roughly 110 beats per minute, and it's good to have kind of tropical house kind of drum patterns, but even so it doesn't have to sound like tropical house or Dutch house drums. It just has that kind of loose, non-straight feel to it. But even then, a lot of people are doing Moombahcore tracks that pretty much just have normal house or dubstep drums. It's kind of, I don't really think the genre makes much sense, but I don't know, a lot of people are into it, and yeah, this track did alright, so I thought I'd show you how I did it. Anyway, first of all, you're going to want to stick the beats per minute thing, roughly 110, 108, 112, anything around there is fine. It really doesn't matter exactly what beats per minute it is. If people tell you that it does, they're lying. Anyway, first of all, what we're going to do is drag in the original file we want to do an edit of, in which case this is Alvin Risk's remix of Ali Love's track Diminishing Returns, which I dragged into this track here, and then you want to warp it, and I'm not going to do a tutorial on warping because it's as complicated as you want it to be. There's just a lot to it, so I suggest if you don't know what warping is or how to warp, find another tutorial and then come back. That's like a real basic Ableton thing that you need to learn how to do. So warp it, and once you've warped it, you'll have it all in time with the grid, which is what you want. And it's probably worth noting that you've got to pick the right warp mode, and I left it as complex. I think textures or tones might be fine as well, but complex seem to work. If you want to have it the best quality possible, stick repitch, but the problem with that is then you'll lose the pitch because it will simply just speed it up or slow it down, and the pitch will change. Keep the quality, but you might end up with notes that don't fit in any key at all. I mean, sometimes it sounds alright, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, I did my warp edit in repitch. I think I might have done roughneck bass and repitch as well, way back when I started doing this whole editing thing, and that sounded fine, but complex worked, so I just left it as that. So yeah, down to the actual editing, make the track bit. So we have the original all warped up, and why that is good is it means we can just grab like 8-bar sections or 16-bar sections and then play about with them, but it means we can grab whole sections of the song and keep the themes going in the original one and the structure. So it's definitely, so it sounds like an edit and you're not piecing together things in a really awkward way. So the overall structure of the track is like a lot of tracks. It's got like a intro bit, which in this case is 32 bars, which is when DJs like mix into the track with, so you want to keep it kind of repetitive. You don't want to be changing things up too much. I mean, the trend is getting more and more towards, especially with this kind of bass music, not to have this intro bit. I mean, if you just look at Skrillex's tracks, they don't really have proper intros. It makes it slightly harder for DJs, but it makes it more listenable for non-DJs and makes it more interesting. But I left in a little bit of a mixing bit anyway. But I find a nice compromise is to have not just the drums playing. Like if you look at house tracks, they just have like drums playing for like a minute. But if you have like here we got a synth, like 2 synth bits going, and the drums, it keeps it interesting enough. Anyway, and then of course you got the build up, which will be this little bit, which is quite short, but it works well enough. And then the hook, and then kind of a different hook, and then kind of a bridge, if you want to call it that. And then another build, and then same kind of thing again, and a little bit of an outro. Anyway, what did I do? First main bit is what I call the vox, or the vocals, which you can see here. I took an 8-bar chunk from the song, which if you click it there, you'll see I took 8 bars here, and I can probably show you what it sounded like on its own if we just solo the Oops. I just realised there's a bit of silence. I soloed that track to show you what was playing, and I forgot that the mic's actually running through as well, so that's soloed. Anyway, you heard that I just had those 8 bars, which was a nice 8-bar bit in the track, which I chose that because it only really had a little bit of vocals and a few other synths going. It didn't have drums. It was quite simple. It made the track recognisable, and because it was relatively empty, I mean, if you look at the waveform here compared to here, you can see that you can kind of add stuff to it without it getting too cluttered. If we'd picked a more complicated bit here to loop, we couldn't really add much to it without it getting far too complicated. So I looped those 8 bars. Did I do any automation? Not here, I didn't, so I just left those playing. And then we've got, we ignore that bit for that track for a second. We've got a kick sound in the kicks, which sounds like where's it gone? Sounds like this. Relatively simple kick sound. I think I limited it, did I? Yeah, I limited it, but it was just a kick sample I found. Can't even remember where. But it was a relatively simple kick, because if you're doing edits, you're normally, if you're putting another kick sound in, you're putting in a kick on top of the kick that was in the original track. So you don't want it to be too mad and too crazy, otherwise it won't fit in and it'll sound out of place, or just it'll make everything too crazy. So it's just a simple kick line flowing in the intro, and that just kind of keeps the tempo going. And then of course you got like snare sound, which sounds like this. Again, no idea where I got the sample from, but I've also high-passed it, which is just something you should do with pretty much all your tracks. Did I even do it here? Yeah, you can see in the vocal looped bit there, I high-passed it as well. So you want to do that with everything that isn't a kick or a bass, because the low frequencies don't really contribute to anything unless it's a kick or a bass sound. So you'll find that if you've got, say, a vocal or a synth, you may think it sounds right and there isn't any bass, but there might be a lot of low frequency rumble that's quite quiet. But then when you put a kick on top of that, it will make it sound like the kick's a bit messy. So it's a good habit to high pass pretty much everything. And then yeah, I got what I call Ghost One, which is just like a different kind of snare sound, like this. I'm not sure, I think it might have been a ghost hit from a sample pack, and then I've high passed that as well. And then what I've done with the snare and the ghost one, which is another snare, is I've got just a very simple drum pattern, like the lighter snare, the ghost is just in a pretty straight 4 to the floor pattern there, you can see. And then each colour for the snare here represents a different pattern, so you got pretty simple kind of Moombahcore, boom-cha, kind of whatever you want to call that sound. And then here is the next one, it's just very slightly different. It's got the snare and the move from there to there, and then you've got it changed up again there. You can see it's slightly different. So basically all I've done is I've got a simple kind of Moombahcore pattern, but mixed it up so it's not just super repetitive. It does change and then loops every 4 bars. And on top of that, to make the intro even more interesting, I've got what I've called the high pass line, which is a bunch of bits I've cut out of, I think, the hook. Yeah, you can see down here I've got all these little things that I've cut out of various parts of the main hook, the main bass line-y type thing, and I've arranged them in a nice pattern, which can take a while, or it can be quite quick depending on how good you are at cutting and pasting bits of the song around. And I've high passed it as well. Have I automated anything? Yeah, I've automated as well. I've high passed it, and then with this utility here, or one of those, I brought up the gain so it just comes more and more in throughout the intro. And the reason I high passed it is because it's from the main bassy bit of the song, and I didn't want it to make the intro mad. I just wanted it to kind of give a flavour of what's to come and what the original track was like. But I chopped it up with all these gaps and rearranged bits and put it slightly out of time so that it sounds kind of cool and slightly different. It's just one of the things that makes an edit and not just like a remaster of the original. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm rambling too much, but I carry on anyway because, yeah, why not? So we got a bit of an intro going, and then after, is that all I did for the intro? Yeah, so just basically adding bits of songs together while keeping it a little bit simple. And then I've got this build up here, and what I've done here is this Vox channel, remember, I've got something going here, but then what I did is I copied the final quarter of a bar there and then duplicated it all along here, and then after 4 bars I cut the duration of the loop in half, and then did that pretty standard, you've heard it all before, kind of like beat roll type, make the loop half a short effect, which is a pretty common and really useful way to make a simple build. But I've made it more interesting than that, because what I've done is, you can see with this frequency shifter, I added a frequency shifter to the channel, and then from about here onwards made the frequency go higher and higher, so it just added a little something to the build. Because Alvin Risk did a pretty similar thing in his original remix, but it was a lot more all over the place, and I wanted to kind of keep that same vibe but do it differently, so I kept it pretty standard. And then yeah, the last little bit is just as you'd expect, just a nice little pre-drop, little vocally thing, and of course the drums just follow the pattern. But that's just your standard build. That's like your go-to. You can't think of another way to build up to the drop. And of course I've got a little sweep sound every now and then as well, which I do in throughout the track. What does that sound like? Well, it's high passed and delayed. It sounds like, wait, it's going to sound like this. Which is pretty cool. And what I did there is I just took a simple, what noise is that? It's a sweep from a Vengeance sample pack, or however you say it, and then I've got a simple delay with a lot of feedback, and I used time, offset the time and made it quite long, and then it gives a cool tail to the end of the sweep, because sometimes you'll have, say, like a sweep, and then after the drop you have like a crash or a sizzle or something, but if you stick a delay on the sweep, then you kind of get a little sizzle come naturally, and it sounds pretty good. Anyway, what else did I do? Did I use utility here? Oh, by the way, if you're pretty new to this game of making music and stuff, you want to use utilities like this to do all your volume automation. You don't want to be automating these track faders, because then it makes it really awkward when it comes to mixing down the track and getting all your levels right. If you use the automation here on the utility, then you can automate the levels of your track relative to one another, and then if you want to, say, bring down the level of just that channel because it's too loud for whatever reason, you can pull that down and not ruin all the automation. And again, it's just a little tip, but if you're new to it, you might not be aware of it. And I've done this throughout the track in all sorts of different places, like you see here. Pulled down the volume of that green thing towards the end, and yeah, I've just done it all over the place. I probably won't explain where I've done that anymore. It's kind of obvious wherever you want to change the level of a track. Anyway, now to the bit that everyone seems to like, which is the drop, which is pretty mad in this case, like this. Relatively simple. I've got the kick snare and the other snare, which I call Ghost. I'll just call it the other snare from now on. And I've got a pretty simple drum pattern. I've got kicks going like a normal 4 to the floor straight, just on the beat, bam, 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 giving it a nice straight, consistent feel to it, which is different to the original, because the original was all dubsteppy, so it kind of felt slow. So this is kind of, it feels a little bit quicker because the kicks are on time, they're not half time. And then that snare is again on the kick as well, which I probably put there to kind of like add to the kick sound. I don't know, can't even remember. And then the snare is a different pattern to before, even though they're the same colour. Like here I've got all that kind of mad stuff, and then here it's all offset again. And basically what you want to do is combine the drum pattern with all these little edits. If you have a look here, all these red things are bits from the hook of the original track. What I did is I simply copy and pasted 4 bars from the file we have here, which is the original, up here. I simply went to the hook, which is around here, copy and pasted 4 bars into here, and then cut it up, rearranged it, and then stuck some snares coming in at different times. And it can take a while to get a really cool sound, but that's pretty much all there is to it. It can take a while doing all these edits, but it's basically how you do it. It's an edit, you're not writing your own track, so you shouldn't really be complaining anyway. And it sounds a lot more complicated than it is when you listen to it, but really all you're doing is rearranging the track, adding in some different drums. But even the drums you can't hear that much because they're not big massive kicks or massive snares. They're basically just there to kind of subconsciously give you a sense of rhythm, which is kind of different to the original. As I said before, you don't want like a big huge kick on top of your original track, because I haven't cut the kicks out of here, for example. They're still the original kicks, but I've added these kicks on top, so you kind of can't add too much in, if that makes sense. But that's all I did really, is that I copy and pasted, I think it's 4 bars from here to here, came up with this cool pattern, and then realised I wanted to then have the same thing but not simply copy and paste it. So what I wanted is to basically have the exact same pattern but with the next 4 bars of the original, if that makes sense. So it's kind of changes like the synths, because changes in the same way that the original does, but still with my new pattern, which is the same as this. So I started off by just copy and pasting these 4 bars into the next 4 bars. But then say for I'll take each clip starting off here, and then I'll move the start point 4 bars forward, and then I'll just go through each clip and move the start point 4 bars forward. And then because of the shape of the original track, it all just follows and it works nicely, and it changes things up just the right amount. And that can take a while, but it's how you can come up with a kind of pattern. You can come up with this really cool editing pattern and keep the pattern the same, but have the noises change like how the original track changes, because as this I don't know how you listen to music from like the dubstep guys, but even though say like the first 4 bars they do sounds pretty similar, sounds like they copy and pasted it, they change up the synth settings very slightly as they go through to keep things sounding just a little bit different, so you don't get bored and it doesn't sound just completely looped. And that's what I wanted to do here, so it's the same kind of idea. And yeah, I did the same thing again and again, and then I wanted to kind of change it up into kind of more dubsteppy, kind of more half time, so the kicks are there and there. So it's kind of, they're not on the beat, they're every other beat, and that's half time. That's what dubstep is. So it's kind of nice as you hear the transition from more conventional dance music-y beat to half time dubstep like this. Again, you can barely hear the drums, but you hear just enough of them to realise that things have slowed down. And it means that after 16 bars, yeah, of pretty like fast kind of like fist pumpy music, but not really. People don't really do that, but you know what I mean. It kind of slows down and gives people a breather and gives the bass a chance to breathe. And I've just literally cut and paste that 8 bars from the original and had it straight, because I've had all this kind of all chopped up messy. You can have a bit where it's straight and that's fine. And then yeah, I had that going again, I just duplicated it, except I imagine must have done something to it, or did I? One sec, should have probably thought about this in advance. Yeah, it looks like, wait, let's figure out what I did. Yeah, okay, I remember what I done now. What I did is, after this dubstep bit, I wanted these next 8 bars as kind of like a bridge. So what I did is I stuck in a low pass filter, this EQ8 thing, which looks kind of messy, but it's simply just a low pass. And then, so this entire bit is low pass, so you can only hear the bass, which sounds kind of cool because you've had all this high frequency stuff. And then after the dubstep bit, you just hear this like deep like bass in the same pattern you're used to, kind of rumbling through. And then you've got this vocal bit from before coming back, which is all high passed, so it fits in with the low passed bass line here, and it all kind of ties together nicely as a bridge. And then I've done a bit of kind of smoothing together, like you'll see. I turn the device, the how's it got on the low pass on there, and then kind of faded it in so that it didn't just like abruptly turn on, because I found what was happening if I didn't have this kind of fade from like not low pass to full low pass without the fade. It sounded too abrupt and sounded too stupid, so it was a very, very quick fade here. It's only 1 beat long. Again, that's just like a small little tip if you're doing a track and a bit sounds like it just was too abrupt, just fade up everything really slowly, and that's all I did there. And again, copied this drum pattern from somewhere else, probably the intro, And then I think that's probably the exact same build here as it was before, and then the whole second half of the song here is exactly the same as there. I think I must have just literally copied and pasted it, and you're allowed to do that. I mean, like Skrillex's Roughneck bass was mostly copy and pasted the whole second half of the song, so if Skrillex does it, I can do it. That's my general rule on life. And then yeah, same kind of dubsteppy bit here, same bridge here, and then this last little bit, it's just a combination of that sub bass bit from before, except faded down, because remember that's the sub bass bit where you can only hear the deep stuff, which is all low passed, and then that's going on a little bit more, faded down with the utility, and then this is all copy and pasted from the intro. There's a lot of copy and pasting going on. That's a good thing to get used to in dance music if you're new to it. You're allowed to just copy and paste a lot, and you'll find you can copy and paste more than you think if you just like copy and paste sections and then relayer them up in slightly different ways. Like you see here, I've got a bit of bass over the intro, whereas before it didn't have an intro, so it sounds different even though it's mostly the same, and that's copy and pasted from there. So you do a lot of copy and pasting, but kind of rearrange it a bit and it will sound completely new. Well, not completely new, but new enough. In case you haven't thought about it, one of the secrets behind music of all kinds really is finding the right balance of giving the listener something they expect and giving something they don't expect. And that is really the key behind everything. Like in dance music, it needs to be repetitive because it's dance music and the repetition makes it danceable and listenable, but if it's too repetitive you get bored. That's the main idea behind things. Anyway, that's the basic sort of the track. I haven't explained in detail the process of like engineering the whole thing, but I have explained how the edit worked and how I did it, and this track has been going down quite well, so I thought this is why I'd use this track to talk through what I did. Yeah, there's not actually that much to it. I mean, it is an edit, not a remix, so you don't have to feel like you're adding in entire new sections, but one thing you should be doing when it comes to this Moombahcore editing process is not just adding in a new drum pattern to the song and then slowing it down. If you're just doing that, I mean, you can call it an edit, but it's a really weak edit. You should at least be chopping things up a bit, rearranging it. But yeah, you don't have to be doing too much though. Yeah, just to quickly see what I did for mastering. I stuck a limiter on. I'm not sure if I needed that or not, but that was just the general practice I do, so that I stick that on the mastering channel so that when I'm making the song, I don't accidentally send too much like peaks through that destroy my eardrums through the headphones. So I should have probably turned that off. And then I've got Ozone going here, which is what I use for mastering. And what did I do? I chose the preset Electro and Dance Rock Master Basic, and I turned up the loudness. And what I did is, this was before I knew much about mastering. I mean, I still don't know an awful lot about mastering, but I would just go through all these different presets and pick one that sounded roughly okay, and then tweak all these parameters here, or these sliders down here. It's a really good program. It does most of the details for you. Like, you don't have to worry about compressor attack and release settings. You just have to know, do you want it loud or not loud, and all that kind of stuff. But I did something slightly different to normal, and you see here I've automated, I'm pretty sure that's the loudness. Let's just test, check. If we go, yeah, you can see what I've automated is this Loudness Maximizer, and you can forget about the details of how it works. It's mostly just a compressor or a limiter, even though they're kind of the same thing, depending on how you look at it. I've put it, you can think of this automation as the top is as loud as the mastering plugin will go, and then the bottom is as quiet. So I've had it all quiet here, and then I've automated it up to loud. So the main bit of the song, which is this section, is really loud, kind of like, yeah, loud is good, and then the rest of it is quiet, and it gives it a bit of dynamics, because what you don't want is everything super loud, because then when the main bit kicks in, it won't have as much impact, and that should be a pretty obvious point. But also worth noting that, like what I did with the low pass filter earlier, is I faded it up, because if you don't fade it up, you just suddenly kick in super loud. It can sound a bit abrupt, which is not what you want. So yeah, I just automated the loudness. I'm not sure how much of good practice it is to automate your mastering process like this, but fuck it, it works. And yeah, the general rule behind everything is, if the output sounds okay, fuck it, seriously. It doesn't matter if it's not the right thing to do. I mean, yeah, a bit like how some people say you're not supposed to do like upward bits on like graphics parametric equalizers. If it sounds good, then who cares? And yeah, so hopefully you've learned a little bit about the process of making an edit. I'm not even sure how relevant this will be, because the trend is moving away from edits. It was how Moombahcore got started really quickly, but people aren't really doing it as much. But I think people still are doing edits, and it of course is a really good way to get used to music producing without kind of jumping in right at the deep end first go. And if you're unaware of any specific details of how I did any bit of the track, like how I say added in the low pass filter or some of those kind of basic things, check out my other videos or just post a comment and I'll tell you. But yeah, just thought I'd let you know how I did it, because a few people were asking me to do a tutorial on how to do edits, because I don't know, I guess people are wondering. So yeah, this is roughly how I did it. And kind of annoying that I can't put adverts on this page, because yeah, I just can't. And yeah, or I could, probably shouldn't. Yeah, I won't put any adverts on this one. I've put some adverts on some of my videos just because, I don't know, it gives me an inflated sense of how important I am when I see 10p running through my AdSense account or something. Not sure why I'm telling you this, but yeah, my name's Multiplier, by the way, and check me out on my Facebook page, Twitter, SoundCloud. Got loads of edits, remixes, originals, all that kind of stuff floating about. My Facebook page is going to be the best way to get a hold of all that kind of stuff, because I normally put out tracks for free on the Facebook page before the SoundCloud. It's a little bit of a bonus for clicking that like button. Anyway, hope you like this. Feel free to send me hate, love, anything in between on the comment section, and thumbs up, thumbs down, it's all good. Sweet, have fun. Oh yeah, and yeah, feel free to ask me anything, it's all good. I'm pretty good at replying. Yeah.